What's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are taking a look at the 5 things you should avoid doing every time you get paid. And if at any point in this video you find any of this information helpful, do me a favor and drop a like down on the video and share it with anyone you think might find it helpful. And as always, I am not a financial advisor, so make sure to do your own research before making any financial decision for yourself. So now with that out of the way, let's hop into it. Now first off, let's picture this scenario. Let's say you're driving down the street on a beautiful Tuesday morning to go get some breakfast. Sounds like it's gonna be a good day. That is until someone starts crossing the street right in front of you and you have to swerve out of the way just to not hit them. But by doing so, you end up driving straight into a tree and the jaywalker flees the scene before the police show up. You get checked out at the hospital and luckily you're all right, but the same can't be said about your car. Your car is pretty banged up. So you decide to call your insurance company and they say, "No worries, we'll cover the cost to repair your car." Wait, really? After you pay for your $1,000 deductible.
Hello? Hello?
My question to you is, would you be able to pay that $1,000 deductible without having to go into debt? And odds are only 41% of you would be able to pay that without having to go into debt. And that report was from back in January of this year, before the pandemic even hit. I'm almost certain that if they did this survey again in January, that the percentage would be even lower. Not having an emergency fund of at least $1,000 to start off with could be one of the biggest mistakes you could make, because although you may think an emergency doesn't happen very often, that same survey found that 28% of the participants had an emergency within the past year. And the average cost of each emergency was actually $3,500. So in my opinion, I believe you should have 3 main goals when it comes to your emergency fund. First, I believe you should save $1,000 so that you can start catching the smaller expenses like speeding tickets, insurance deductibles, and so on. And after you have that, you should start building up to 6 months and eventually 12 months of expenses so that if anything big happens or you lose your job, you'll still be able to stay afloat for quite a while. The second mistake you could make would be not paying off any high interest rate debt that you may have. Now some of you may be asking, wait, why would I save money first if I have a lot of debt? Won't that just cost me more money? Now yes, you would be paying more in interest if you save first, but hear me out. I believe that you should save up $1,000 first and then shift your efforts into paying down your debt. That way, in case any minor things come up, you won't have to go back into debt to pay those off. But you never want your emergency fund to stay under $1,000. So let's say you're in the process of paying down your debt and you have a $200 expense come up. That would drop your emergency fund down to only $800. So what I recommend you to do would be hold off paying off your other loans, just make the minimum payments until you get your emergency fund back up to $1,000. Once you get your emergency fund back up to $1,000, then you should continue tackling your debt. But again, just my opinion. Alright, so now let's say you're at the point where you're ready to invest. Awesome. Now investing naturally comes with its own set of risks, but those risks are relatively small in comparison to the risk thousands of people unknowingly put themselves in by investing into things they don't understand. So let's just think of this purely hypothetical situation for a moment. Let's say I own 10 shares or 10 stocks of a company who recently went bankrupt. Before the bankruptcy was announced, my 10 shares were worth $100 each or $1,000 in total. But after the bankruptcy was announced, those 10 shares dropped in price to only $1 each because practically no one wants to buy a bankrupt company with no clear future. But then one person decides to buy the stock for 2 reasons. 1, they don't know what they're buying. And 2, it's cheap, so they figure, hey, might as well. And then someone else comes along and does the same thing. And then 10 more people. And then hundreds more. And before you know it, thousands of people are piling into this cheap stock because they see everyone else doing it. And this in turn ends up driving up that price of the stock over 1,400% in just a few days, turning my bankrupt $10 in stocks into over $150 in a bankrupt stock. So what changed? Absolutely nothing. Now, some of you may be thinking that's insane and that it could never happen. But that's exactly what happened to rental car company Hertz shortly after they filed for bankruptcy back in May of this year. But like I said, nothing had fundamentally changed with the company. The stock primarily soared because thousands of everyday investors like you and me were piling in by the masses into what essentially was a worthless stock. Now, I understand that this is an extreme example, but it only further helps to prove my points. Don't just blindly invest into something because it's really cheap or because you see a lot of other people buying into it. If you don't know what it is you're buying and don't have even a basic understanding of their financials, you might as well just go to a casino and put all your money on red, because that's essentially what you're doing. The next mistake I see many people make is when they don't subscribe to the channel if they haven't already. Did you do it? Okay, thanks. But aside from that, the fourth mistake people make is when they buy things they can't afford. I see this all the time at work. People come into the store wanting a $400 iPhone, and when they check their bank account, if they have the money at all, they oftentimes barely have enough to cover it, and they tell me,
"Yeah, I got the 400. Money's gonna be tight, but it's no biggie. Payday's in a few days anyways."
Payday is in a few days. That's the excuse many people use to convince themselves that they can afford to buy something that they really can't. Now, yes, they have the money to pay for the phone, but what I am referring to is that many of them cannot afford to be in the vulnerable position that many of them put themselves in. Because what if an emergency comes up before they get their paycheck? Many of them would have to resort to using some sort of high interest rate debt to pay for it, and end up digging themselves into a hole by doing so. So what I have found to be very helpful is by using the rule of 5, which was thought up by Jasprit Singh over on the Minority Mindset YouTube channel. The rule of 5 is meant to be a guide to help you determine whether or not you can afford to buy any particular item, and it's very simple. Before you buy something, just ask yourself this quick question. Do I have the money to buy 5 of them? If the answer is no, then you should probably second guess whether or not you actually need that item. But if the answer is yes, then odds are you'll be just fine. Man, forget that, I'm gonna buy it anyways. The fifth mistake I see people making is when they buy more items just because they're on sale. Now, I'm all about buying things on sale if you were already going to buy it. But what I'm referring to is when people are at the store and they see the big red sales sign and they think, "Ooh, I'll save $5 on this." So then they buy it. And they leave the store feeling like a champion because all they think about is that they saved money. When in reality, if you take a look at the receipt, you'll notice that they spend like $10 or $20 on something they were never planning to buy anyways. So my recommendation is to just ignore the sale signs, because after all, it says sale, not free. But with that said, that wraps it up for this week's video. If you found any of this information helpful, do me a favor and drop a like down on the video and subscribe while you're down there for a brand new video every Monday. I've got a really important one coming out next week. And with that said, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next week with another video.